What's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be looking into one of the most important mechanics in R.E.P.O, if not the most important mechanic, how the difficulty is actually calculated, and what the difficulty mechanic actually does. Now, I do have to say this, I am not perfect. Everything I am going to talk about is based on my own research, and some of it is extrapolated based on similar information I was able to find by perusing the game files. If something I say is more of an educated guess, then I will be sure to let you know beforehand. And small spoiler warning, the difficulty mechanic controls a lot of things behind the scenes, and I will be talking about as many as I could find. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. Now, let's get started. The first thing that I want to talk about is that when I first started researching, I thought the difficulty mechanic was more of a scale, starting at 1 and slowly rising as you progress through the levels. However, this is not the case. There are a total of only 3 difficulties in the files: difficulty 1, difficulty 2, and difficulty 3. You can simply think of these as easy, medium, and hard. I was unable to find exactly when the difficulties change, but it seems like the difficulty stays the same for around 3 to 4 rounds, then goes up by 1. This means that either the first 3 rounds are easy, 4 through 6 is medium, and 7 plus is hard, or what seems a little more likely is that 1 through 4 is easy, 5 through 8 is medium, and 9 plus is hard difficulty. With that out of the way, the first thing that the difficulty actually decides that I wanted to talk about is which modules can be used for building the level. I wanted to go over this first, simply because I made a whole video that already explains the level mechanics, and this will be a pretty small section. Simply put, each individual module has a dedicated number. This is the difficulty number of the level. Each module prefab has a variable in it that ties it directly to that difficulty number. This means a module with a difficulty number of 3 will only start to spawn when you reach levels that are difficulty level 3, whereas a difficulty 1 module can show up from level 1 onwards. Is basically it for that section. I don't want to sit here and go through every single individual module, as there's not really any point to doing that. The next thing that the difficulty level determines is actually which enemies can spawn. However, it does that in a way that I wasn't really expecting. Each enemy prefab has a script attached to it that states what difficulty it is, how long it can stay spawned for, how long until it can despawn, and how long until it can spawn in again after it despawns, as well as something called an action multiplier. Now, I couldn't actually find what the action multiplier does in the code. However, if I had to guess, this is probably a number that is used to change certain values like the damage of an enemy, to make the actual coding numbers a bit easier. For instance, the gnome could have a damage of 100 in the code, but since it has an action multiplier of 0.2, it would multiply that 100 by the action multiplier of 0.2, only dealing 20 damage per hit. Now, the last thing before I go into individual enemies and their difficulty numbers is that enemies with a difficulty number of 3 can still spawn on early rounds. It seems like the difficulty number of an enemy correlates more to its weight when spawning. If the level has a total enemy weight of 3, then if a difficulty 3 enemy spawns, no other enemies will actually be able to spawn in that level. However, this is a bit more speculative, as the code is a little difficult to read, and I haven't actually been able to find an exact answer yet. Really quick, it looks like all enemies have the exact same spawn timers. They stay spawned in for 20 to 40 seconds, and when they despawn, they can't spawn in again until after a 240 to 300 second cooldown. And these numbers account for each enemy in the level individually, so you can have 2 of the same enemy type in the level, but they could be on a different spawn timer from each other. Now, to start with the difficulty 1 enemies, we have the ceiling eye, or the peeper, which has an action multiplier of 1. You have the duck, or the apex predator, which has an action multiplier of 2. You have the gnome, which has an action multiplier of 0.2. You have the spearer, which is an action multiplier of 1. And the Shadow Child, which also has an action multiplier of 1. You will notice that most of the enemies just simply have an action multiplier of 1. On to the difficulty 2 enemies, you have the animal with an action multiplier of 1, the bang or banger with an action multiplier of 0.3, the bowtie, the floater or the mentalist, the hidden, the chef, the upscream, the rugrat, who all have an action multiplier of 1. Then the difficulty 3 enemies Also, all have an action multiplier of 1. Those are the Beamer or the Clown, the Headman, the Huntsman, the Robe, the Reaper, and the Trudge. Hopefully soon I will be able to find more information about all of the numbers associated with the enemies, and then I'll be able to get that into a video all about the enemy mechanics. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video was actually the valuable spawning system. I thought the difficulty of the level would play a part in which valuables can spawn, and while that seems like it could technically be true, the spawning of valuables is actually completely based on the size of the room and really nothing else. In the code, it finds a value called room volume. This is used in calculations that decide if a valuable simply fits in the room. Then, it gets the size of valuable spawn points in that room and does the same thing. This makes sure that large objects aren't spawning inside of small cupboards, and small objects aren't spawning way out in the open, similar to how something like the broom on the wizard levels spawn. Each level has around 8 to 20 different valuable spawn points depending on the size of the room, and each valuable spawn point dictates what can spawn based on the space available. Currently, there are 7 sizes of valuables that can spawn, and I will quickly go over what valuables are in each category. First is the tiny valuables. Those are the diamond, the ring, the goblet, the ocarina, the pocket watch, and uranium mug. Then there are the small valuables. Those are the bonsai plant, hard drive, chomp book, crown, doll, frog, gem box, globe, love potion, money, music box, toy monkey, uranium plate, and small vase. Then there are the medium valuables. Those are the 3D printer, laptop, propane tank, sample 6-pack, bottle, clown, computer, fan, the gramophone, marble table, radio, ship in a bottle, trophy, vase, goblin head, power crystal, and time glass. Then there are the big valuables. Those are the barrel, the big sample, the creature leg, flamethrower, guitar, sample cooler, diamond display, ice saw, scream doll, television, big vase, cube of knowledge, and the master potion. Next, with wide valuables, you get the animal crate, the ice block, dinosaur, piano, and the griffin statue. Then tall valuables are the science station, the harp, paintings, the Dumgolf's staff, and the sword. And lastly, you have very tall valuables, which are the server stack, the golden statue, a grandfather clock, and the wizard broom. And that's really it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope this was at least informative to some people. Let me know down below what you guys want to see next. I'm hoping to get something about the enemies done relatively soon. I've got a little more digging to do, but hopefully I'll have that done. And with that being said, I will see you all in the next one.